Kia ora mai tātou, tēnā tātou katoa. Call on members order of the day number 2.
Official Information Parliamentary Under-Secretaries Amendment Bill, second reading.
Adrian Rudarahui.
I move that the Official Information Parliamentary Under-Secretaries Amendment Bill be now read a second time. Tēnā koe e te mangai o te hare. Sir, I'm very pleased to take this call on the second reading of this, my members' bill. I'm very pleased in that since the first reading we have come a long way. I want to acknowledge the work of the Government Administration Committee chaired by the Honourable Ruth Dyson. As a former member of that committee, I know that that's one of the hardest working committees in Parliament. I want to acknowledge all of the members for their openness about this bill. Now, this bill is about openness and transparency in this Parliament, and it brings the Under-Secretaries into being also responsible for answering Official Information Act requests. I said in the first reading that it was an anomaly that we have this current situation where an Under-Secretary, although being a member of the Executive, is not required to answer Official Information Act requests. So we fortunately passed the first reading and was sent to the Government Administration Select Committee. We received a total of 5 submissions to the bill. All 5 were in support of this bill. Because there's only 5, I'm going to read them out. The New Zealand Law Society, the New Zealand Law Commission, Brent Jackson, Malcolm Harborough and Tara Dumont. And one of the things that 3 of these submitters pointed out was that parliamentary Under-Secretaries are in fact part of the Executive. They are not part of the Executive Council, but they are nonetheless part of the Executive. 2 of the submitters quite clearly pointed out that the role of parliamentary Under-Secretaries is created under the Statutes Act. And under that particular act, it makes parliamentary Under-Secretaries part of that Executive. That was pointed out by these submitters. Part of the discussion as well was around, what I call the slippery slope theory that was promulgated in the first reading by some members. There have been claims that and that information held as an MP may be captured in this bill. That's quite clearly incorrect. The Ministry of Justice in their report pointed out that very fact, that in fact it is work that we do as members of Parliament are not captured by this bill. Under the Official Information Act, that is quite separate to the work that those members who are part of the Executive do. They also pointed out that a request to the Minister does not assume that the Minister has the information that the Parliamentary Under-Secretary has. They pointed out that there was no requirement for the Minister to request that information off the Parliamentary Under-Secretary, nor to create official information. That is the basis of that anomaly. I also acknowledge the government members who, in the first reading, who voted against this bill, but through the parliamentary, through the select committee process, and having access to all of the information from the submitters, in particular the Law Society and the Law Commission, as well as the report from the Ministry of Justice, who addressed every single one of those issues that was raised in the first reading. I think it's important to acknowledge that the weight of that evidence clearly influenced the members who had voted against it in the first reading, to the point that the report that has come back to the House is a report that is supported by all of the committee, and I want to acknowledge them for that. I think it shows how members of this of that process through the select committee can bring back a better bill and ask the hard questions, certainly, but in this instance they've clearly come to the understanding that this is a good bill. The recommendation from the Ministry of Justice is that it's entirely consistent with the Official Information Act and that it should be passed by Parliament. And so, I acknowledge the things that have been said by the member from the ACT Party. I think it would be silly not to.
Well, he's changed his tune, hasn't he?
I think that despite the, some of the way that it was expressed, the issue is any party that stands up for open and transparent government should support this bill.
That's right.
And that's the only question that should be asked, not whether someone thinks it's particularly about that person. In this instance, there is only one parliamentary Under-Secretary, so I can understand why one might think that. In the interest of good legislation, I'm pleased to hear that if I could be incorrect, but I understand that this bill is going to be supported by all parties in the House. I welcome that. Sir, I don't want to prolong my contribution on this. I'm sure other members of the House will have a lot to add. But just one thing more, there is an amendment that was agreed to by the Select Committee. It does make the bill clearer. There is only one clause in this amendment bill, sir, so I commend this bill to the House. Kia ora.
The question is that the motion be agreed to. David Seymour.